Thank you very much, Sophie. Hello, good evening and welcome to BBC Channel Islands. I'm Charlie McCardle. Jersey's Royal Court has sentenced a driver to 15 years in prison for killing a father and son in a hit and run. Dean Lowe and his 11-year-old son Charlie died on the 5th of August last year after they were fatally struck by a van as they walked along a road in Grouville. Behind the wheel was 29-year-old Dylan John Pounds, who'd been drinking at several pubs in the preceding hours, according to evidence at his trial early this year. In the past half hour, Pounds has also been banned from driving for 12 years. In court today, the Crown read out victim impact statements from Dean Lowe's partner, Ashley Laboudelier, who was Charlie's mother. She said, "Nobody can begin to understand how my life has been destroyed. I struggle to put one foot in front of the other. There is no joy in my life now. My boys were my world. Now I come home to silence. My heart aches that I will never see their faces again." A statement was also read out on behalf of Kay Lowe, mother of Dean and Charlie's grandmother. She said, "I will never get to hold my Charlie in my arms again. I will never celebrate anything again. The rest of my life will be about survival. I have nothing left to live for." Moments after the sentence was read out, Jersey Police gave a statement outside the Royal Court.
Dylan Pounds' selfish actions have had grave consequences on Dean and Charlie's family, friends, and on our island community. Drinking and driving should never go hand in hand. The risks are simply not worth it.
And a family liaison officer also read out an extract from 11-year-old Charlie's school diary.
"The most inspirational person to me is my dad. Your dad teaches you through your life. Yes, they may shout at you, but they're just trying to get you through life. Fathers will protect, no matter what the cost. Also, the most inspirational person is my mum. They can talk to you when times are hard."
Well, the deaths of Dean Lowe and his son Charlie, who had just left primary school, shocked the island's community. Julie Flanagan has been speaking to people who knew them as they continue to come to terms with the loss of a much-loved father and son.
Oh, we're all going on a summer holiday. We got you.
A force of nature whose energy and enthusiasm was hard to resist. But just 2 weeks after this video, Dean Lowe and his 11-year-old son Charlie were killed, knocked down by Dylan John Pounds, who had spent the day drinking. Their loss has affected all who knew and loved them.
It's a lot quieter without that kind of dynamo in the corner. And they've had to rearrange the office, so his desk is no longer where his desk was, because a few of them couldn't come in for a while, because the idea of seeing his desk kind of empty was just a reminder of what had happened, which was challenging for them to deal with.
On Saturday, the 5th of August 2023, Dylan Pounds collected his friend and work colleague Callum Best and drove here to the Union Inn. They arrived at around midday to have a few games of pool, and while here they had a bacon roll and at least 1 pint each. After leaving the Union Inn, Dylan Pounds drove here to the Pembroke. During the trial, the court was shown CCTV footage of him and his friend Callum Best ordering pints. Giving evidence, Mr Best said he recalled them drinking 6 pints each. The court also saw CCTV footage from this pub, which showed Dylan Pounds standing close to Dean and Charlie Lowe. After overhearing Pounds talking to his friend about driving here to the Dolphin, witness Sarah Blake told the court that she offered them a lift. She said she had a vivid memory of Pounds standing on the dance floor, swaying slightly while he held a pint glass, and the pint was slopping from side to side. She said he was very drunk. Later that night at 9:27, footage from the bus showed the men getting on board. But Dylan Pounds didn't stay on the bus. He got off close to the Pembroke. 16 months on, there's still much emotion among islanders who knew Dean.
I was incredibly upset. I'm upset talking about it now. And I was very, very angry to see an individual with such a future and a child with such a future, because he was obviously very popular at school, disappear was absolutely devastating. And I don't know how the family managed to cope.
You came here to pay your respects, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I came here. I said a little prayer.
The loss of Dean and Charlie is still keenly felt across the island. Now many want to find a positive way to remember them.
Come on, you're supposed to be following us!
Turning to some other news, and a senior Jersey civil servant who withdrew from involvement with the ferry tender decision after voting in an informal poll for one of the bidders has claimed he was badly let down by the government. Richard Corrigan took no further part in the process after news of his inadvertent mistake was made public in October. In an email in early November, which has now been published under the Freedom of Information law, he told the Chief and Economic Development Ministers that the government had failed to clarify the delay in coming to a decision had not been down to him. He said that political decision-making in Jersey had differentiated positions between the Channel Islands, had instead been to blame. The BBC has asked the government to respond. Meanwhile, the politician responsible for Guernsey's ferry tender process says he wouldn't have done anything differently, even though he's disappointed the islands didn't reach a joint agreement. Deputy Neil Inder says the Economic Development Committee, of which he is the president, had not envisioned selecting a Guernsey-only service, and it happened very quickly. He insists the fact the Condor Islander vessel is part-owned by the States of Guernsey played no role whatsoever, and says the ferry decision has not affected the island's relationship with Jersey.
We've both acted in the interests of our islands. Jersey's come to its decision, Guernsey's come to a different decision, and that is it. So if we think of that decision as a one single decision, that decision is over for both the islands. We've now got to move on to the next thing, which is working on the inter-island routes, which, as I said in the scrutiny hearing, we aren't going to get a decision by Christmas.
A scrutiny panel says additional training for health staff would reduce stress for people in Jersey with ADHD and those waiting for a diagnosis. A single specialist consultant psychiatrist is currently the only person in the island permitted to assess and diagnose people with the condition. But the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel has heard they spend the majority of their time issuing repeat prescriptions. It says this has contributed to lengthy waiting lists for an assessment, which are around 3.5 years long. The panel says training nurses to issue medication would dramatically improve people's experiences. Well, it was a wild weekend of weather, with winds reaching more than 70 miles an hour in the Channel Islands. Storm Dara tore down about 20 trees in both Jersey and Guernsey and caused damage to a number of buildings and houses. Officials across the islands say the bailiwicks weathered the storm well and got off relatively lightly. As the storm subsides, Gemma Dormady can tell us more.
Across England and Wales, Storm Dara brought a weekend of damage and disruption. Today, tens of thousands of homes are still without power. In the Channel Islands, a similar story, although to a far lesser degree. For 2 days, the airports came to a standstill, with people unable to get to or from the islands. Extra flights today have helped passengers' plans finally get off the ground. The storm-force winds caused damage to the roof and rooms at Le Huguet Primary School in Guernsey and to the roof of Le Canavet Sports Centre in Jersey. Both were closed today to assess damage, but will reopen tomorrow. It was a busy few days for tree surgeons and rescue services who cleared blocked roads.
Especially being on quite a main road with a public footpath that's used quite often. The tree did come through the wall, as we've seen, so yeah, it could have been quite a bad situation really if it happened at a more busy time of the day. Obviously it's unfortunate for the customers that this has happened, but it's everyone's enjoying themselves and their work, as it were, and feel a part of the community being able to help out.
And it wasn't just trees that diverted traffic. On Jersey's north coast, gales piled up sand at the bottom of Greve de Lec Hill. While force 6 winds continued to blow today, that hasn't stopped cleanup. And for the Channel Islands at least, we've reached a calm after the storm. Gemma Daubeny, BBC Channel Islands News.
Well, next to our programme tonight, they signed up to serve but lost their jobs for being gay. Until the year 2000, gay people were banned from serving in the UK military. The UK government has said a £50 million compensation scheme will be launched next year for those who were dismissed. But ahead of a debate in the House of Commons on Thursday, one of Guernsey's most senior politicians has said more money should be made available. Ewan Duncan's report begins with the words of one Guernsey resident who was kicked out of the army because of her sexuality.
I was 17 when I decided to join up, and my mum wasn't too pleased about it, but they came down the boat to see me off. After the first 6 weeks, I was called in to the CO's office and asked if I was gay. And coming from Guernsey, I wasn't really sure what, if I was a lesbian or not. I didn't know. I hadn't even heard of it, to be honest. Once I did sort of realise that I had feelings towards women, I sort of had to keep it quiet because it was a big no-no in the army. We weren't allowed to be gay.
When Linda moved army camp, she began a relationship with a woman. This time the questioning came from the Special Investigation Branch.
It was like days and days, that it was constant 4 or 5 hours a day just being hounded with questions and intimidating questions, and it was awful. Then they sent me to Mill Hill, a psychiatric hospital, to see if they could cure me, which is definitely out. It wasn't a nice experience. The questions that they asked me, it was horrible. And once I'd got back to camp, they said that they'd made a decision and that I would be dismissed. So I was so upset because that was my career. I'd signed up for 21 years. I wanted to do. I'd done 5 years, never had any complaints about my work. I was gutted.
Linda's story is far from uncommon, as over 4,000 people are expected to be eligible for compensation.
People, lost their livelihoods, careers. They were shamed. If you were thrown out of the army or any of the forces and you had to go home in a time when it wasn't so accepted to be gay, and you potentially had to kind of out yourself. So there was all sorts of emotional sides to it as well as financial. It's not just one way or the other. And I think the government, they made an apology. You've still got people, not feeling comfortable turning up, for example, for veterans events. Someone could have been in the forces for a year, 20 years. It really didn't matter. And, they were removed because they were gay and actively kind of sought out. It wasn't even kind of a don't ask, don't tell type thing. People actually were trapped.
The UK government has previously warned veterans they would be unable to write a blank cheque for compensation. But campaigners like Craig, who served in the early 90s, say the offer on the table simply isn't good enough.
The government is proposing a compensation scheme of £50 million for what's estimated at being up to 4,000 veterans. That gives an average payment of £12,500. Well, if you served your country, if you were deployed on operations, if you met some of the difficult challenges faced by people in our armed forces, and then you were sent to prison for being who you are, then £12,500 is a derisory sum. And we really do need to do better than that.
The call for greater compensation is being echoed by Guernsey's leaders too.
If you consider how their lives have been destroyed, affected what they can do, pensions, not being able to do the jobs that they loved. And I think that compensation should be higher. We've seen in terms of the post office, and quite rightly people are getting compensation for that, but the compensation for veterans who fought for the British Isles, and we know that Guernsey's got a long history of Guernsey residents fighting in the armed forces. It is pretty derisory compared with what they've gone through.
The debate in UK Parliament begins on Thursday, but for many former service personnel, the offer of a payout decades later barely compensates them.
It's a bit late, but I don't think it'll make up for what we went through, or loss of earnings for those 21 years. I would have served my full term, but for being kicked out, basically.
Some news in brief now, and Alex Snowdon will continue to represent Alderney and Guernsey states following a vote at the weekend. He'll be joined by newcomer Edward Hill, who topped the polls. Steve Roberts, the other current representative, was not re-elected. Help with services including pensions, income support and tax is now being offered from Jersey Government's new office, which opened to the public this morning. The building on Union Street is open from 8:30 until 5 Monday to Friday. And Guernsey Raiders Colts and under-16 players and staff have raised almost £8,000 for charity Cancer Research UK after shaving their heads. They launched the fundraiser in support of a teammate diagnosed with the disease. Now, Jersey primary school pupils have been playing their part by making hampers for people supported by the Grace Trust Food Bank for Christmas. And our community reporter Chris Craddock went along to meet some of the busy elves as they were hard at work.
Dr Pepper, because they deserve it. And a cornflake. And a cornflake. Frosties, you mean? They're frost. Okay.
Making sure those who are struggling have something at Christmas. Pupils at FCJ Primary School sorted through the donations that have been given by their families to make hampers for the food bank.
So we're making hampers to make sure that people at Christmas are not lonely, so then they can feel happy at Christmas Day.
It's important for everybody to have something to have on Christmas so they don't feel alone or upset.
Staff say it's something everyone has been working on during the festive season.
This Advent, we really wanted to ensure that the children were giving back to the community. Our FCJ values teach us that we should look after those in need. And as part of our projects, we wanted to do a reverse Advent calendar where the children bring in different items each week during Advent, which are then donated to the SVP Food Bank. And we're also making some lovely hampers this year for the Grace Trust.
These hampers will make a difference.
The roles are reversed almost. Here am I, a 74-year-old bloke, getting excited about Christmas, receiving from these lovely children these hampers for our clients who, are in difficulty. It's going to do them a world of good.
And the children have a message for those finding it tough over the holidays.
Try to stay positive.
Do you want a hug?
What a great thing to do. Right, it's time to talk about the weather after what wasn't the best of weekends. Let's see how the week is faring. Here's David Brain with your weather forecast.
Thank you, Charlie. Good evening. I know it's still quite windy, but let me show you where the peak gusts of wind were across the islands over the weekend. Certainly Jersey was up at 72 miles an hour, Guernsey 65, Alderney 58. Some damage obviously caused by the strength of wind. And we've seen the area of low pressure move away from us. This was Storm Dara, but it's still quite breezy. Those winds will continue to drop both through the day tomorrow and more especially through the day on Tuesday. It becomes an easterly wind. But this week is rather cloudy. There'll be some showers dotted around, and it's generally feeling quite cold as well as the strength of wind. What we have is an area of low pressure which has moved away from us now, and it's filled in. It's down across parts of Central Europe at the moment into the Mediterranean. This area of high pressure becomes the main weather feature, but dragging around the edge is a flow right along the English Channel, picking up moisture, picking up cloud and generating showers, and that's what we've got for tomorrow and also Wednesday. Little change in the pattern until we get a southeast wind Thursday, Friday, perhaps a better chance to see a few more breaks developing in the cloud. Tonight, though, the cloud is quite thick and the showers will just keep on coming, I think. And it's a cold wind again overnight tonight, nowhere near those sort of gusts I've been talking about, but still breezy and 4 or 5 degrees the minimum temperature. And this is tomorrow's forecast. It's a very similar setup with plenty of showers around, some of those quite heavy in places, and 9 degrees the maximum temperature, but of course feeling colder because of the wind. These are the times of high water. For Sark, that's at 1 o'clock and 13:32. St Helier, midnight 52 and 13:25. The forecast for the coastal waters keeps those winds going. It's an east-northeasterly force 5 with showers and the visibility occasionally moderate in those showers. Now, by the time we get to Thursday, Friday, we've changed the wind direction. It's more of a southeasterly starting to develop, and also a few more breaks in the cloud, but still quite cold. It warms up, though, at the weekend. Bye for now.
Yeah, those temperatures beginning to drop as the week progresses. Right, that is it for the time being. Please do join me again for our late bulletin tonight at 10:30. From myself and the rest of the team for now, bye-bye.
Back now to the top story and the disruption wreaked by Storm Dara over the weekend. But for one couple who thought their wedding celebration was going to have to be cancelled, there's a happy ending. When the red alert went off on Friday night, Paul and Jason Wilson Sellers were told they couldn't use the venue they'd booked. But just hours later, and after a lot of hard work by guests and staff, a local holiday park stepped in to make sure it went ahead. John Ayres has the story.
It's the wedding celebration that very nearly didn't happen. Shortly after the red alert went off, Paul and Jason were told the venue wouldn't be able to stage their wedding. Jason had family who had travelled over from South Africa for the occasion.
I was like, out of my control, there's not really anything we can do about it. Jason was a little bit more stressed than me.
Yeah, I got quiet, which is not me.
Yeah, he went really quiet, but Adrienne said, give me half an hour, I'll get something sorted out.
Matron of Honour Adrienne immediately put out an appeal and was surprised by the response. Ladies Mile Holiday Park stepped up.
There was a lot of stress. Being that late at night, we didn't know if anybody was going to be able to help with less than 12 hours notice. We'd also spent hours putting all the decor together at the original venue, so it was a case of having to lift and shift and finding out if we could get in to get the things.
So the following morning, with just a few hours to go, family, friends and Ladies Mile staff set about taking down the decorations in the original venue and putting it all back together here at the holiday park. And despite the rush, the wedding went ahead as planned.
We managed to pull that off. Well, we set it up in like 3 hours and then we rushed back to get ready. So the fact that it was all done so quickly, just fantastic.
Yeah, I like Christmas, so I'm mad about Christmas and glitter. So this is kind of like my own Hallmark Christmas special.
Don't get me wrong, the venue cancelled, and I think they were slightly disheartened when they turned up in the morning, but I think when they realised what we could do for them, they realised that actually it was going to be great. And for me, the moment was when they were getting married on the stage, it had all come together, and I thought as long as they're happy, that's the most important thing.
I can't thank them enough, to be honest. It was just unbelievable. The kindness of strangers and the community was just fantastic.
Yeah.
John Ayres, BBC Spotlight, Dawlish Warren.
What a strong spirit. Good for the future of those two, I think. OK, let's check the weather. Red warning this weekend. You were spot on with that, David, weren't you?
Thank you. Thankfully, there are no warnings in force at the moment. Thank you, Janine. But these weather pictures capture the weekend, really, and the start of this week. That was Watch It on Saturday. Huge waves here. And this one was Porth from today. You can see that the seas are a lot calmer. But the forecast for the next few days keeps a wind going, but that wind is from a slightly different direction. It's coming in from the northeast, and it won't be anywhere near as strong as the gusts we've seen recently. So this week is predominantly dry. It is still quite cold, though, and that's a feature of the weather, I think, for the week in front of us. And the winds continue to ease. In fact, by the time we get to Wednesday, very much lighter conditions for all of us. Just a reminder of those gusts of wind. That's what we saw over the weekend. No surprise at the amount of damage caused because of this strength of wind. The area of high pressure that caused that is to the west of us. The main storm was just squeezed by the area of high pressure, and that just tightened the isobars That's now moved a long way away from us. That's now down into the Mediterranean. We keep these northeast winds going for both tonight and into tomorrow, so the winds aren't going to drop that much overnight tonight, but they start to ease certainly by the middle of the week, and by the time we get to Thursday, we've got high pressure just to the north of us and weather fronts in the Bay of Biscay that may throw a fair amount of cloud across us, but much lighter winds by the time we get into the second half of this week. Now tonight we have some clear skies initially, but more cloud will creep in from the east through the night and plenty of showers for the Channel Islands. That cloud will be around first thing tomorrow morning, so we could start off a bit grey and a bit cold tomorrow morning with 4 or 5 degrees. Still quite a gusty northeast wind for us tomorrow, but those winds will continue to drop through the day. And we have a lot of cloud for most of the day tomorrow, and it's capable of producing a few light showers, particularly over high ground, a few holes in the cloud here and there. But temperatures struggling a little bit tomorrow. After quite a cold start, we might get up to about 7 or 8 degrees as a maximum, but throw in that keen northeast wind. It'll probably feel considerably colder than that, like it's done for the last 2 or 3 days, but not as windy, I have to stress that. For the Isles of Scilly here, I think we've got breezy and quite cold conditions and generally a lot of cloud around. It's coming around the edge of the area of high pressure, and that cloud is going to be a bit stubborn to shift for the week ahead. These are the times of high water for Plymouth. That's at midnight 08 and 12:35. Further west for the Isles of Scilly 11:44 and Portland 1:21 and 13:40 tomorrow afternoon. Now the forecast winds for the next 2 days, similar sort of strength and direction, northeasterly, force 5 to 6, but easing down by Wednesday to a 3 or 4. So we are going to lose the strength of wind, but it is, for the most part for tomorrow, still quite keen. There'll be a few showers, particularly through the Channel, and generally good visibility outside of those showers. So let's look at the week ahead then, because we've got a fair amount of cloud right through to the weekend, but the cloud will break at times to allow some sunny spells. Perhaps on Thursday morning, some winter sunshine, then clouding over a bit. More cloud around on Friday and Saturday, but a gradual but very slow recovery in those temperatures. We finally get to double figures as we go into the early part of next week, once we return to those southwesterly winds, which won't be anywhere near the strength we've seen through the weekend. So it is relatively quiet, just a bit cold and quite breezy for the next 24 hours. Have a nice evening. Janine.
David, thank you very much. Thank goodness that's behind us. I hope you survived the storm okay and didn't suffer too much damage. I'll be back with the late news for you at around 10:30. Whatever you're doing, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.